TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Now, when you first heard about the idea for Monday Night Nitro, did you think it would work? What were your thoughts?
The only thing I thought is, why go head to head with the guy on Monday night? Why not give the wrestling fans a chance to enjoy both Raw and Nitro by going on a different night? Now that I look back at it, kind of a genius of a move. That move, by the way, was purely Ted Turner.
Right.
Yeah.
You talked earlier.
Ted Turner said, BS. We're not going to go on Wednesday night. We're going to go on Monday night head to head with the guy. But I mean, there was great success there with the NWO.
Right.
But all of a sudden, the NWO became bigger than WCW.
Right.
You had 20 guys over there.
It's true. How did things change in WCW with the explosion of the NWO?
Ooh. Boy, we had, once that became a bona fide hit, we had a lot of people taking credit for the NWO, the New World Order. Scott Hall, Kevin Nash came in, and they were the interlopers as the outsiders.
Right.
So all of a sudden, they say, wait a minute, the television audience is watching the show. Are these guys with WCW, or are they still with the WWE?
Right.
I don't know. I think they confused fans. I think the fans took a little time to sort it all out. But it was a good thing.
What were your initial thoughts on Eric Bischoff?
I liked Eric. He was refreshing. I didn't know if he really had a handle on what he was doing, but I think he could be very personable. He was the one that said, we need you here.
Right.
We want you here. And that was kind of good for me to hear. It got me back up again. And a new challenge.
Do you feel he was in control of his product, or do you think like Hogan was in his ear? And then I heard stories that, Nash and Scott Hall kind of had control of him.
Everybody was in his ear.
Right.
I think what Eric probably should have done, as I look back in 2020 hindsight, probably should have put himself inside the room with a good television producer. Somebody like a Kevin Dunn. You get somebody like that. Kevin Dunn, obviously not available,
right,
but maybe, just maybe, there might be somebody out there. Work those details out with them, and not let the boys, and have them in the contract that they had creative control over their character.
Right.
Come on.
Right.
Give me a break.
Huh. Do you think Bischoff understood the business, or do you think he was in over his head?
Oh, I think he was in way over his head. I think the general consensus, if you talk to Eric Bischoff, I think he would tell you the thing just began to spin out of control, and you couldn't stop it. It would be like holding your hand up in front of a freight train. It couldn't be stopped.
What do you feel Eric's biggest mistake was in WCW? Was it listening to the boys?
Listening to the boys.
Letting the guys.
And I mean, everybody. That would be as big a mistake as listening to me.
Right.
But I mean, having the input, Bret Hart had creative control. Kevin Nash had creative control over his character. Hogan, obviously. But I think the big one was Bill Goldberg.
All right.
Bill Goldberg, somebody that hadn't been in the business more than 2.5 or 3 years.
Exactly.
And he was calling his shots. And I like Goldberg. I mean, he's a fun guy, great guy.
How did Eric Bischoff change over time?
Eric Bischoff, I think, believed that as time went on that he was a genius and he was the great creator of this thing. And then all of a sudden he became very power hungry. Being able to tell people what to do, and if they didn't do it, what he could do to them. That he, with the snap of a finger, could end their careers. Not so.
Right.
Not so.
How out of control do things get in WCW?
Well, I probably could give you a laundry list that we could chew up 3 or 4 hours of tape.
Huh.
But I was never really handed in the later stages of WCW any kind of a format, a run sheet for the show until we were 10, 15, 20 minutes into the show. No preparation. Where do we go with this interview with Buff Bagwell? What am I going to do with Scott Steiner? And the guys could say whatever they wanted to.
Right.
I mean, when Vince Russo came in there, he wasn't the solution. He added to the problem because the boys were going to buck him and they knew they could do it and get away with it. Plus, he had a little different idea of what television was all about.
Right. Yeah. Was it frustrating when Eric's constant attempts at trying to work the locker room and the boys with different angles and stuff?
You know, at that particular point, I think Bobby Heenan and myself had stepped back and realized that it was a different era where maybe the tail was wagging the dog. And I mean, it was so apparent because plans would have to be changed at the last minute.
Lots of politics.
A lot of politics, and that doesn't work. If I can go to Doug and tell him something and go around you, you're offended, and he doesn't get what he initially wanted anyway, I've offended both of you.
Right.
And that's kind of the name of the game. And politics ran rampant, as they would say, in WCW.
How did things change when Russo came over?
All things changed instantly. Number one, talking politics, the boys had their respective noses as far up his rear end the first day of TV as they possibly could.
Wow.
Everybody tried to, huddle with him. Where's my spot going to be here? What am I going to be able to do? Am I going to be a champion? What can we do? I've been good to you. Vince, now here's your chance where you can be good to me.
Do you think he was in over his head?
Definitely. No long-term thinking at all. You hit the nail on the head. They were worrying about getting a Monday night rating or getting a Wednesday night rating or getting a buy rate. But that episode down in Florida, and I believe it was at Bash at the Beach or one of those pay-per-views where Vince Russo went off with that shoot interview on Hogan.
No.
I thought that was absolutely despicable. That was the end of it.
Right.
That was it. It was all over, baby. That was it. Well, I knew they were in big trouble when they're losing $60, $70 million a year on billing $250 million. The books just didn't match up. But I think the real crowning blow is when AOL merged with Time Warner, and they didn't want to have anything to do with wrestling. As a matter of fact, a lot of the old Turner people didn't want to have anything to do with wrestling. But Ted Turner said, I love my wrestling. It's the first live programming that he had on TBS, and he stood by it.
How did you find out about the sale of WCW?
I was sitting at home. I was asked not to come to TV. And the crazy part about it is, this is how insane this whole thing had become. I had just signed a multi-year contract that actually long-term exceeded well over $1 million.
Wow.
And that was signed with Turner Broadcasting.
Did you get paid for it still, or?
I got paid every nickel.
Nice.
Every nickel.
Is it true, like, some of the guys were getting paid up until, like, 2005? Like, $1 million? Who was it? Was it
I forgot.
Goldberg, I think, or somebody?
I don't remember.
They're getting...
Well, I don't know about them. I do know about me.
Right. Is there a time where you think the stress got to you and you weren't having fun anymore?
I do. There was a point in time that I think it really got to me when we came up with this impossible feature. I didn't come up with it. Somebody came up with it that was called Face to Face. And that was trying to do a lot of mass production, and it became impossible. The boys had to learn to do things all over again. Everything was generic, and I don't think it was near as effective as the straight stand-up interviews for the markets.
Right.
That was stressful for me, and I could kind of tell that was the beginning of the end.
Right.
even though I went to Turner, Vince didn't renew my contract.
Huh. I was going to ask, how did you wind up leaving?
I didn't get a contract renewal.
Did you want to stay?
Well, I'd been talking with the Turner people, and I had an agent at that time who was kind of directing me in that way. And, you know, after you spent 10 years in one place, 13 years before, I said, do I really want to make this move? You know, I probably could have sat down with Vince and cut a deal. But no, change is good for everybody.
Right.
And that change was very good for me because I think we did prove something with WCW.
Did you leave on good terms with Vince?
Very good terms.
Okay.
I gave him a hug in the office and said we had a hell of a run together. And I think that probably kind of set him back a little bit because guys don't usually leave like that.
Right.
You know, you're gone and you're hugging me and saying thanks for a great 10 years and thanks for a great run.
Huh. Did he know at that time that you were going to WCW, or did he think you were just getting out of the business?
Well, I mean, I don't know if he knew that time that I was going to go to WCW, but before I had physically left, because I stayed through SummerSlam and a couple of weeks afterwards, into the first week in September, and I started immediately at WCW, and they had to pull my chain back on a non-compete.
Wow.
And then there were some financial considerations that were made, but the long and the short of it is I didn't go on the air at WCW on TBS until November 1st, leaving the first or second week in September.
Well, I do remember that.
TitleMatchNetwork.com